You always hear on the news and social media. US strikes Venezuelan drug vessels, a recent strike on narco submarine that left 2 dead, and the reasons. Always war on drugs, but what if everything you're being told about the coming war is a cover story? What if the real reasons for sending American troops into harm's way have nothing to do with the official justification? The Trump administration says this is a necessary war, a war to stop drugs, a war for regional stability. But a storm of search data, a chorus of global analysts, and the chilling precedent of history point to a different truth, a darker, more complex mission. This isn't just about Venezuela. This is about oil. This is about global power. This is about a 100-year-old American playbook for regime change, being opened once again. The public is not being told the whole story. But their frantic online searches reveal what they truly fear. You see the warships, hear the threats. You know instinctively that this is bigger than drugs. Over the next minutes, we will dismantle the official narrative and expose the real war for Venezuela, a conflict driven by interests that remain unspoken in press conferences and official statements. Let's begin by laying out the 2 competing stories. First, the official version from the White House and its allies. The administration's case rests on 3 pillars. First, the war on drugs.
Brought it up the other day with all sorts of drugs, and we're going to take them out.
They allege that the Maduro government is not just corrupt, but a narco-state, operating as the cartel of the Suns, directly profiting from smuggling cocaine to the United States. Second, they point to the migration crisis, the millions of Venezuelans fleeing their country, creating a regional humanitarian disaster that the U.S. must help stabilize. And third, the issue of regime legitimacy. They call Nicolas Maduro a dictator, his elections a sham.
We're not talking about that, but we are talking about the fact that you had an election which was a very strange election.
The real motivations, hidden beneath the surface, form a powerful trifecta. The first and most glaring motivation is natural resources. Venezuela isn't just another oil-producing nation. It sits on top of the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, estimated at over 300 billion barrels. The world's 10th largest reserves of natural gas, and in the 10th place in rare earth elements, which in the light of recent events of the Chinese ban on rare earths, Venezuelan resources are now more important than ever to compete with the Chinese Communist Party. For decades, this resource has been a curse as much as a blessing. Under Maduro, and his predecessor Hugo Chavez, these reserves were nationalized, cutting off American and Western corporations from direct control. The strategic prize of controlling, or at least managing, this oil wealth is an unspoken but paramount goal of any regime change operation. It's about energy dominance and economic leverage on a global scale. When you control Venezuela's oil, you control a key pillar of the global energy market and deal a significant blow to the petrodollar system that rivals like China and Russia are seeking to undermine. The second motivation is geopolitical power. Why? Because Venezuela has become a key strategic foothold for the United States' greatest rivals. Russia has provided military advisors, conducted joint exercises, and invested billions in the country's crumbling infrastructure and many military equipment such Su-30 Mk2 flanker fighter jets and S-300VM air defense system. China has been Venezuela's primary creditor, loaning tens of billions of dollars in exchange for oil, effectively making Caracas a client state of Beijing. This confrontation is not just with Maduro, it is a proxy struggle with Moscow and Beijing. It is about reasserting the Monroe Doctrine, the old American principle that the Western Hemisphere is the U.S. sphere of influence, and pushing back against rival powers in America's backyard. The presence of Russian warships in Venezuelan ports and Chinese-funded infrastructure projects represents a direct challenge to American hegemony, one that Washington seems determined to confront, not with diplomacy, but with force. The third motivation is domestic politics. The data is directly linking this crisis to Trump. A foreign conflict can serve as a powerful tool for domestic political strategy. It can divert attention from internal scandals or economic troubles. It can unite a political base around a common enemy and a strong commander-in-chief. The spectacle of military power projected abroad is often a calculated part of a domestic political playbook. By presenting himself as a decisive leader confronting a foreign threat, a president can galvanize support, silence critics, and create a rally-around-the-flag effect that transcends partisan divides. In an era of deep political polarization, external crisis is a time-tested method to reshape the domestic political landscape. If this sounds familiar, it's because it is. The United States has written this script before. The current escalation is not an anomaly, it is the latest chapter in a long and dark history of American intervention in Latin America and beyond. The ambition has been simmering for years. During his first term, President Trump repeatedly asked his advisors, "Why can't we just invade Venezuela?" He was reportedly fascinated by the idea. It was a persistent curiosity that has now found its moment. The pattern is clear. A foreign government deemed hostile to U.S. economic or strategic interests is targeted for removal through covert action, political subversion, and, if necessary, overt force. The justification is always framed in moral or security terms: fighting communism, promoting democracy, combating terrorism, or, as now, stopping drugs. But the underlying drivers are consistently about resources, strategic positioning, and economic control. So, who is the intended beneficiary of this new chapter in Venezuela? The current event provides a clear answer. The name Maria Corina Machado is a breakout figure for a reason. She is the US-backed, Washington-favored opposition leader. Her rise in the public consciousness is directly tied to the narrative of regime change. She is being positioned in the media and by Western powers as the legitimate, democratic alternative to Maduro, the person who would lead a friendly, pro-Western government in a post-invasion Venezuela. She is the modern equivalent of the leaders the US has installed in other nations after engineered coups, a figure whose political ascent is inextricably linked to American patronage and the promise of reopening Venezuela's economy to foreign corporate interests. The specific, tragic incident that has become a flashpoint: 26 killed after U.S. strikes on Venezuelan alleged drug boats off Venezuela's coast. This is not a theoretical event, it is a specific lethal engagement that resulted in numerous deaths. The administration calls it a counter-narcotics strike. But United Nations experts have raised the alarm, suggesting that such unilateral strikes on the high seas, without a UN mandate or a formal declaration of war, may amount to extrajudicial executions. Constitutional lawyers are arguing they violate both international law and the U.S. Constitution, which reserves the power to declare war for Congress. The use of lethal force under the guise of drug enforcement creates a dangerous precedent, allowing the executive branch to wage war without oversight or declaration, effectively bypassing the foundational principles of democratic accountability. This brings us to the most critical flaw in the official story: the evidence. While the administration publicly points the finger at Maduro's government as a major drug trafficker, U.S. intelligence agencies have reportedly stated they have no evidence that the Maduro government directly operates with major transnational cartels. The war for Venezuela cannot be contained. A full-scale invasion or prolonged conflict in Venezuela would inevitably draw in these global powers, forcing a response and escalating into a much wider confrontation. Russia and China will not easily relinquish their strategic and economic investments in Caracas. For Moscow, Venezuela is a foothold in the Western Hemisphere and a lever to distract and drain American military resources. For Beijing, it is a key node in the Belt and Road Initiative and a vital source of energy. A war in Venezuela risks opening multiple fronts in a new Cold War, with unpredictable and potentially catastrophic consequences. So, we are left with a choice. Do we accept the official story, a war on drugs, a fight for democracy? Or do we listen to the truths revealed in the data, in history, and in the gaps of the evidence? The real invasion of Venezuela may not look like the D-Day landings. It is an invasion of sanctions designed to cripple the economy and turn the population against their government. It is an invasion of naval blockades meant to strangle the nation into submission. It is an invasion of covert operations, funding for opposition groups, and a relentless information war to demonize the regime and legitimize its overthrow. It is a war driven by the timeless motivations of resource control, geopolitical dominance, and domestic political strategy. The American people are asking the right questions. Their searches are a digital cry for the truth. They see the pattern. They fear the consequences. The script for this war has been written before, in the archives of CIA operations and in the ruins of nations from Iran to Guatemala, from Chile to Iraq. The names and places change, but the plot remains the same. The only question now is whether we, the public, will accept its performance, or finally demand a rewrite.
This is the real war for Venezuela.
You are now a witness. You have now seen the evidence. You have heard the official story, and you have seen the real one, written in the ink of history, the data of public fear, and the stark reality of geopolitical ambition. This is not just about Venezuela. This is about a cycle that has devastated nations from Iran to Guatemala, from Chile to Iraq. It is a cycle fueled by resource hunger and imperial pride, sold to the public through lies of liberation and security. Now, the same script is being rehearsed for Caracas. We're surrounded by headlines about military deployments and potential conflicts. But what if I told you the most powerful tool for global control isn't in the Pentagon, but on Wall Street? The real story is how economic policy and the power of the dollar shape our world behind the scenes. If you want to understand the true mechanics of modern empire, you need to watch my deep dive, How the US Dominates the World Without War. The link is on the screen now.